The Dodgers bullpen is in shambles, and if they want to fix it, they have to make a trade. Now, who could they trade for? That's coming up next on Dodgers Dugout. What's going on, Dodgers Nation? Doug McCain here. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DMac_LA. We're less than 50 days away from the trade deadline. Those delicious trade rumors will be rolling in any second now, and we're going to have you covered right here. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and if you really want to support the channel and you want to see us post even more Dodgers content, smash that like button. And as always, I want your takes down below in the comments section. Today's Dodgers Nation question of the day: who do you think the Dodgers should trade for? Which reliever out there that could be available do you want to see the Dodgers pursue? Is there a name in this video you like? Is there a name that's not in this video that you think they should pursue? Because this is part one of a two-part series, but let me know down below. And for all latest Dodgers news, head over to DodgersNation.com. So let's get right into it. At this point, you know the Dodgers have one of the worst bullpens in all of Major League Baseball. How bad is it? Right now, they have a 4.9 ERA. That's the second worst in the league. If this season were to end today, this would be the worst bullpen in Dodgers franchise history. Let me say that one more time. If the season were to end today, this would go down as the worst bullpen in Dodgers history. This bullpen has been about as reliable as the ice cream machine at McDonald's. It's been about as reliable as airplane Wi-Fi. This has been an absolute dumpster fire of a bullpen. They couldn't stop a nosebleed. They need to fix it. And they don't have the internal options, in my opinion, to make this a World Series winning bullpen. Yeah, you could give some guys down at AAA an opportunity. I think there's a possibility we could see something very interesting soon, but still, I just don't think that the internal options exist to say, hey, this is a bullpen you would trust in October. Because one, they don't miss a ton of bats. They don't dominate hitters. This year, they're struggling keeping the ball in the yard. So far this season, they've allowed 36 home runs. That's the third worst in all of Major League Baseball. You saw the walk-off home runs from last week. You saw yesterday Berger hits that home run against Yency Almonte. They've struggled to keep the ball in the yard. And I think at this point, if the Dodgers want to be serious contenders, if they want any hope in winning the World Series this year, you have to go out there and trade for a bullpen piece, maybe even multiple bullpen pieces. That's how bad it's been this season. And it's not everyone. I mean, Evan Phillips, he has looked like a top 10 to 15 to 20 reliever at times. Brusdar Graterol, he's had his moments. But for the most part, across the board, this bullpen has been bad with a capital B. And if they don't fix it sooner than later, this team is going to start flailing fast. This team could fall into fourth place behind the Giants, behind the Padres, and behind the Arizona Diamondbacks, because the Padres and Giants, they're picking it up. The Diamondbacks, they played well all season, and they're not showing any signs of slowing down. But this Dodgers pen, it is bad. So how do they fix it? Well, one, I think this organization, they need to ask themselves a couple of questions. And I think the first question they need to ask themselves and answer honestly is, are they truly committed to the 2023 Dodgers? Is this a charade, just a gap year, waiting for Shohei Ohtani to see if they can get him and start a new era of Dodger baseball? If that's the case, then I totally understand. You give the young guys experience, you go all the way in on the youth movement, you see who is going to be a key contributor moving forward, and that's that. But if that's the case, why do you sign a JD Martinez to a one-year deal? Why do you sign David Peralta to a one-year deal? Two veteran players, guys that have produced, guys that have outperformed their contract for the most part. JD Martinez, he's been a top 10 slugger this year. He won't be back. Peralta won't be back. Jason Hayward, he's been everything you could have ever hoped he would be, and then some. He can be a contributor. You know what he's been able to do in the postseason, not just as a player, but as a guy that's a leader of this group. Jason Hayward and Freddie Freeman, they're the leaders of this bunch, and you also have Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts in their absolute primes. Do you want to squander that? Do you want to run the risk of Freddie Freeman falling off or Mookie Betts possibly getting injured or falling off at some point? Or do you want to strike while the iron's hot and go after a championship? And then, of course, there's Julio Urias, who most likely will be gone after this season if they don't re-sign him. Do you really think they're going to sign Shohei Ohtani and Julio Urias? That's unlikely. If they don't get Ohtani, possibly they bring back Urias. And then there's Clayton Kershaw, who's touch and go year to year. So I still believe this team has the core intact to go after a World Series. I didn't even mention a Will Smith, who to me is clearly the best hitting catcher in the game. They have tons of pieces. They could get it done, but you have to start by fixing the bullpen. Now, who should the Dodgers go after? Who should they pursue? pursue? Well, a couple of factors are, one, who are the guys on shorter-term contracts? Who are the guys that don't have tons of arbitration years left, that don't have tons of years left on their deal? Because that is what the Dodgers like. Because when it comes to bullpen pieces, we know some of them are like one-hit wonders, right? They're volatile from one year to the next. They're inconsistent. You rarely see consistent production. And look, let's be honest. Save for very few cases, most bullpen pieces, they're failed starting pitchers. So that is always a factor. And then two, do they truly want to take on some money when they're trying to be a little more cost conscious than in years past? But hey, when you consider the fact they're already paying Trevor Bauer $22 million to pitch in Japan, they're already going to be well over the CBT. They are not going to be able to get under by any stretch unless they want to completely blow this thing up. Then hey, why not add some salary? And now if you're the Dodgers out there and you're Andrew Friedman, your counterpoint to me is probably this. Hey, D-Mac, we got some guys coming back. The cavalry's coming. There's reinforcements on the way in the form of Daniel Hudson. Yes, Daniel Hudson, he pitched very well last season. He was on his way to having a career year across the board. ERA, FIP, strikeout rate, walk rate. He looked the part, but this is a guy that's dealt with injuries. This is a guy that is definitely closer to 40 than he is to 30. He's on the older side of his career. Can you really depend on a Daniel Hudson to come back and be your closer from towards the end of June until late October? I think that's a little unrealistic. I still think he has the potential to be a guy that can absolutely be a very trusted, high-leverage reliever. He can be a weapon for this team. There's no question about that. But to pin that closer's role on him and expect him to fix all your problems, I think that's unrealistic. I think that's borderline delusional. And then, of course, who are these other guys that are returning? I mean, are you really banking on J.P. Feyereisen coming back sometime in August? Are you banking on Blake Trinan returning sometime in September? You already lost Alex Reyes, who you were expecting back at some point in June. He had to undergo another shoulder surgery. So if you look at the horizon, not a lot of guys returning that you can trust. Now, I do think there are some intriguing names down the AAA level. Of course, Emmett Sheehan, he's definitely had a meteoric rise. You got Landon Knack. He's consistent. He's a guy who's good, not great. He's a guy maybe you could see in a piggyback situation if he comes up and pitch multiple innings. So I definitely think there is some talent out there, but we're talking about the World Series. The standard is the World Series. It's World Series or bust for this Dodgers team, and to expect those guys to come up and be able to perform for an entire year against tough offenses throughout October, I think that's also extremely unrealistic. You got to get some veterans. You got to get some guys you can trust, and you got to get some guys that have proven themselves in this league. Okay, so who are some of these pitchers the Dodgers could pursue? Well, I've got a list of 7 for you. 7 relievers the Dodgers could target at the trade deadline. And Andrew Friedman, if you're watching, you're welcome, man. It's nothing, no big deal. Hey, if you want to hit me up on some trade advice, just let me know, man. I can help you out free of charge. Free of charge just because I love the Dodgers. I got a part 2 coming this weekend, so look for that. But we're going to start with Alex Lange of the Detroit Tigers. Now, Alex Lange, the cons for Lange and why this is unlikely is that he's still pre-arbitration. He would be a little more on the expensive side as far as prospect capital that the Dodgers would have to give up. But this guy's one of the best relievers in the league. He's a right-handed pitcher, has a 3.29 ERA, a 2.69 FIP, a 32.7 strikeout rate, throws the hardest curveball in all of Major League Baseball, has a mid-90s fastball. This guy has great stuff. And one thing I'm identifying, one thing I'm looking for is high strikeout rate. Guys that can miss bats because that's what plays up in the postseason. That is what the Dodgers lacked last year. And yes, it's nice to have guys that can induce soft contact and guys that pound the zone, but with the restriction on the shift, you don't have that cheat code. You can't utilize the shift and get outs that way. So strikeout guys are coming at a premium. Look, everyone always says that the double play ball is the pitcher's best friend. I disagree. I think the pitcher's best friend is the ability to miss bats. It's the ability to punch guys out, because when you do that, you avoid the flukiness. You avoid the bloop singles or just the soft hit balls that find grass, or you avoid guys having errors in certain situations. So the more times you miss bats, the better it is. So I like Alex Lange. He's a possible option. I think it's unlikely, but still, he's a guy that, hey, if they can pursue and they say, hey, we want him for beyond next year, and we think he could be a guy that could fortify this bullpen for years to come, maybe they like that as a possibility. Now, 2, we got Aroldis Chapman. Now, Aroldis Chapman, this one is probably highly unlikely as well, but this is a name that is most likely going to be available. The Royals are open for business. The Royals, they're a last-place team, one of the worst teams in all of Major League Baseball, and the pro for Aroldis Chapman is the fact that he's on an expiring contract. He's on a 1-year, $3 million deal with the Royals, and he's been one of the best relievers in the game. The strikeout rate is sky-high once again at 41.8%. His 15.3 walk percentage, that's definitely high, but he has a 270 ERA, a 169 FIP. Last year had the worst year of his career, and they didn't show up to the postseason workouts for the Yankees, so it all fell apart for him in New York, but still, he's throwing hard like he did. You see the crazy hip and shoulder separation, just like we did back in 2017, the way he coils, the way he throws that ball. Like I said, the walks are high, but still, I mean, this is the best that Chapman has pitched in years. He hasn't even allowed a home run yet this year. He's missing barrels. He's missing bats at an elite level, and the elephant in the room here, the 800-pound elephant in the room, though, is the fact that he does have that history with domestic violence. We know that the Dodgers, they had made a deal for him in agreement to get him back in 2015 from the Cincinnati Reds, and it looked like he was going to be a Dodgers reliever for years to come, but almost immediately as the deal was reported, it was put on hold. And why was that? Well, you might know that Aroldis Chapman, he was involved in domestic violence allegations, and once those surfaced, the Dodgers, they pulled the plug. They eventually said, no, thank you. The deal fell through completely, and then it was interesting, though, because last offseason, there were some reports and rumors that the Dodgers were interested in signing Aroldis Chapman before he signed his deal with the Royals. Now, will this happen? I think it's highly unlikely because, one, the history is not favorable there with the Dodgers and Aroldis Chapman, and the fact that they pulled the plug back then, why would it change now? Two, they would look hypocritical with how they handled the Trevor Bauer situation, so I just don't think that this is going to happen. I don't think in the same year that you're paying Trevor Bauer $22 million to pitch in Japan, they swing a trade for Aroldis Chapman. But a lot of you guys asked me about Chapman, so I just wanted to give you guys the facts and give you guys the rundown as to the facts and factors behind a possible deal with him. And then there's Joe Kelly. So coming in next, Mr. Joe Kelly, Dodgers legend. There's murals around this town where they have Joe Kelly, of course. He threw it to Astros back in 2020. Really solidifies his status as a Dodger for life with the way he handled that. And so far this season, the stuff has been on fire. The stuff has been lights out. The results haven't been the same. A 4.79 ERA, but he does have a 2.79 FIP. And with that disparity, that tells you that he's most likely going to run into some good luck, and that'll balance out. And that ballooned up 4.79 ERA isn't truly an indicator of how he's performed this season. But if you look at the strikeout rate, a 30.3 strikeout rate, a 6.7 walk rate, and also contractually, another guy that checks off a big box for the Dodgers. Like I said, they don't want to trade for guys that they're going to be committed to long-term for 2, 3, 4 years. Joe Kelly, he's in the final year of his guaranteed contract, and next year, the Dodgers would have a $9 million club option for 2024. So if they trade for Joe Kelly, he performs well, then you could bring him back next year for $9 million. Now, the con for Joe Kelly is the durability. You saw back in 2021, he goes out there in the NLCS, and he was done in that series, and his season was over, and he hasn't thrown more than 50 innings in a season since 2019. So definitely the durability concerns are there, but from a stuff standpoint, if you've seen his gyro slider, the gyro slider, whatever you want to say, it is just a lethal pitch for him. The velocity is way up. He's the 89th percentile in average exit velocity, the 86th percentile in expected slug, the 99th percentile in fastball velocity. So far this season, he's averaging 98.9 miles per hour on his two-seam fastball. So his stuff has been electric. Also, he's comfortable with the Dodgers, I think, in a role where he provides some life to that bullpen. There's a lot of talk that really is not that many leaders in that bullpen this year with David Price gone, with, of course, a lot of these guys that have been there for so many years. You just don't have that consistency. And we know that Joe Kelly, he has a magnetic personality. He can galvanize that group. So I think that would be another benefit. And also, if the Dodgers want to swing big, this next guy could be someone that could absolutely change the complexion of that bullpen and take them to a whole nother level. He would make them respectable almost immediately. And of course, I'm talking about Kansas City Royals Scott Barlow. Now, a few days ago, Jeff Passan reported that the Royals are listening to trade offers for Barlow, and the Royals, like I said, they're terrible. They're 18-50, last place in the AL Central, and let's not forget, Barlow was drafted by the Dodgers, and he had committed to play baseball at Fresno State, but he chose to sign with the Dodgers after being selected by LA in the 6th round of the 2011 MLB draft. And so far this season, if you look at his numbers, they're not overly impressive. They're not eye-popping. A 4.38 ERA, a 3.60 FIP, but the strikeout rate is up at 33.7%. The walk rate is higher at 12.5%, but this is a guy that I think in this Dodgers organization, they can correct some mechanical issues. They can get him on the right track and just truly optimize him because he's a very, very talented pitcher. Since making his big league debut in 2018, he's posted a 3.16 ERA, a 29% strikeout rate, a 9.3 walk rate, and a 42.7 ground ball rate in 259 appearances. And he has elite 59 appearances, and he's a guy that has elite swing and miss stuff. He throws his slider 41% of the time, the curveball 31% of the time. Like I said, at 12.9 K per nine. And also another thing I like about him is he has experience as a closer. So far this season, he's racked up 7 saves, but he has had 40 combined saves from 2021 to 2022. So if the Dodgers do want to go closer by committee, he does have experience in that role. Also, too, he's in year 2 of arbitration, so it wouldn't be a pure rental. They'd have him for the remainder of this season and for next season. So it's not a guy that you're looking for just the rest of this year. You'd have him back, but he's not a guy that is pre-arbitration or he has 3, 4, 5 years left on his deal. Just a year and a half. So that's a guy that is going to be traded at the deadline. I think there's going to be teams out there like the Texas Rangers, maybe the Diamondbacks, other teams out there that could get aggressive and go for him. He is going to be one of the top dogs at the deadline. So it's going to be very expensive to go after him, but I do like him. I do like him as a possibility. Like I said, started his career with the Dodgers. They're familiar with him. I think that, yes, he is having a down year by his standards, but another thing I like about him, too, is he has shown some consistency throughout his career. 2021, he had a 1.88 ERA plus. 2022, a 1.86 ERA plus. So that means he was 86% above league average. This year, that number is down to 101. The whip is high, but I think he's just a little bit out of whack. And one thing I like, though, is the strikeout numbers have skyrocketed. So he's going to be a very coveted guy, a guy that teams are going to want, especially contenders. So it's going to be very competitive for him. And like I always say, if you're Andrew Friedman, you're not going to be able to get those discount prices. You're not going to be able to get the prices like on Halloween candy the day after Halloween. No, you're going to have to step up and pay up big if you want to get a piece. And he's a guy that I think they absolutely should consider pursuing. And then, of course, there's David Bednar. This one's highly unlikely, but a lot of you ask me about David Bednar all the time, and I just want to give you the scoop on him. So far, he's been elite once again. A 1.78 ERA, a 2 FIP, a 3.28 expected FIP. This guy's stuff is off the charts. Fastball, curveball, splitter. Doesn't walk guys at all. Keeps guys off the base pass. 89th percentile in fastball velocity. Misses barrels. Induces soft contact. This guy would be a perfect closer for the Dodgers. Only problem is he's 28 years old, and the Pirates control him through his age 31 season. So, one, they might want to keep him because they think their window is possibly opening up with the fact that they've basically performed better, and they've struggled from a bullpen standpoint, which is a little ironic, too. Their bullpen is towards the bottom with the Dodgers this month, but this is a guy that is an elite closer, but from a prospect capital standpoint, you're going to have to include some top 10 guys. Maybe one, maybe a few guys later in the top 20, top 30 range. So if he does become available, he is going to be expensive. Will the Dodgers go for it? I highly doubt they will because they've shown us, they've proven to us with their actions that they don't trade for elite relievers that have years of team control left. Until they do that, I'm going to remain skeptical on a guy like a David Bednar. But this next name is one that I think you should definitely pay attention to, and that's Tanner Scott. So Tanner Scott, left-handed pitcher. If you look at his StatCast metrics, lots of red. 99th percentile in hard hit percentage. He's in the 85th percentile in fastball velocity, a 98th percentile in fastball spin. You know the Dodgers, they covet that spin rate. If you look at his numbers this season, a 2.81 ERA, a 2.78 FIP, very consistent, a 35.2 strikeout rate, 11.7 walk rate. Only issue is the Marlins are winning. The Marlins are in second place in the NL East. They're sitting at 38-31, right behind the Atlanta Braves. So there's no indication that the Marlins are going to be sellers at this point. Maybe they want to keep him, but he makes a ton of sense, especially when you consider how inconsistent the Dodgers' left-handed bullpen pieces have been. From Alex Vesia, from Victor Gonzalez, who's looked better, but he hasn't been lights out of late. Justin Brill, he's not going to be a guy most likely. Caleb Ferguson, he's had his struggles. So, yeah, I think he's a guy, if you're looking for a lefty, if he becomes available, if I'm Andrew Friedman, I'm picking up the phone immediately. I'm trying to get a deal done for him, and also asking about Jorge Soler. We're getting into some other trades later about names like that. But I think Tanner Scott makes a ton of sense, especially too when you consider the fact that he's not on an expiring deal, but he's only under team control for one more year, has one more arbitration year left. And I think at this point, you have to consider guys like that. And it's not like the 30-year mortgages, right? It's not like you're tied to him forever or married to him. No, this is a guy that is only going to be under team control for the remainder of this season and next season. And if he's good, you want good players, right? You want guys you can trust. And this is, I think, one of the more underrated, better relievers in all of Major League Baseball. And then lastly, for part one, how about, I can't believe I'm saying this, I can't believe I'm doing this, how about old friend Kenley Jansen? How about you bring the Kenley adventure back to L.A.? Of course, he signed that 2-year, $32 million deal with the Boston Red Sox. He's owed $16 million next year. If you look at his numbers so far this season, they're not ultra elite, but hey, you take a 3.18 ERA, a 3.14 FIP, 26% strikeout rate. The walk rate is high at 12%, but the stuff in the velo has trended in the right direction. He's in the 64th percentile in fastball velocity, 98th percentile in fastball spin, has one of the best extensions in the game. He's in the 96th percentile in expected slug, 91st percentile in hard hit percentage. Yes, the $16 million next year is definitely on the high side, but it could make for an intriguing reunion if the Dodgers want to go that route and if the Boston Red Sox want to move off him and become sellers because of how competitive the AL East is. Now, I think it's highly unlikely, but I just kind of want to talk about Kenley Jansen. How about that? I mean, even Craig Kimbrell. Craig Kimbrell has looked like Mariano Rivera compared to some of these Dodgers relievers this season. I mean, hey, the Dodgers, they crumbled against Craig a few weeks ago. So, yeah, this Dodgers bullpen, they need work. In my opinion, I strongly recommend a trade. I advocate for a trade. And yes, of course, that I love trades, and you know that, but still, I think that that's the only way that this team can become legitimate contenders this season is if they go to market and bring some guys in. I know Friedman hates giving up prospect capital for relievers, but this year, the bottom line, you just have to. That is the price. It is a premium. There are more teams that are contenders. There's more teams that are in the postseason, and if you want to play with the big boys, you can't just keep shopping at the clearance section at the 99-cent store and expect to have all these reclamation projects work out, because this is not a postseason bullpen right now. Is this even a AAA bullpen right now? I think it's a bigger question. Needs to be fixed. I think it's going to start at the market now. It's going to take some time for these deals to really matriculate, and you're going to have names emerge, and the market's going to have to set itself. But I will say, if you make the first trade, if you throw that salvo, right, you set the market. You set the market, and there's definitely value to that. And also, too, you get that player for longer this season, and he can come in and help stop the bleeding right now, because this bullpen is in desperate need for some arms at the moment. So I would like to see him make a deal sooner than later, not just at the deadline. Remember that Chris Martin deal was a little earlier than the deadline when they traded him for Zach McKinstry. But who, by the way, Zach McKinstry, Z-Mac, is having a pretty decent year with the Detroit Tigers. As a 109 weighted runs created plus, above average big leaguer. So feel good about that. Congratulations, Zach. We're still rooting for you, right? But let me know down below in the comment section, who do you want to see the Dodgers trade for? Who should they pursue? Drop some names down below. I got a part 2 coming with 7 other names, so you won't want to miss that. So look out for that later this weekend or possibly early next week. But let me know down below. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DMAC_LA. You're going to want to follow me because I'm going to be posting all the trade rumors, all the trade information over there too. As soon as any of these insiders start posting it, got some interviews coming up with some guys too. Hopefully we'll get some interviews and some information that way. So definitely go follow me. Follow Dodgers Nation as well. Subscribe to the channel. And until next time, think blue, bleed blue, and I'm out.